Michael Bay's Transformers movies were iconic, and they skyrocketed the franchise to new heights previously unseen, creating a whole new generation of Transformers fans. I was actually a fan before the movies, having grown up with the Unicron trilogy, but the movies still blew my mind, and I have such fond memories of the first two movies and their toy lines. But by the time the third film rolled around, I was kind of aging out of Transformers. I still liked it, of course, but I was going through a period in my life where I thought it was wrong for me to like toys, and I slowly tried to move away from my hobbies to seem more normal and mature. Of course, nowadays I think that's a ridiculous way to think. Like what you like, and if people can't accept it, that's their problem. But I was growing up, and sometimes you just don't get it yet. I did watch Dark of the Moon, the third Transformers movie, but my stepdad thought that Revenge of the Fallen was so bad that he refused to go see Dark of the Moon in theaters. So I ended up watching a pirated copy of the movie on my laptop. The movie was filmed on a handheld camera, so the quality was terrible, and sometimes people's heads would get in the way. So to be honest, when I watched the movie, I didn't really enjoy it. But years later, I went back and realized it might be the best Michael Bay movie. What's good, internet? Jake here, dumb as ever, and in today's video, we're going to discuss why Dark of the Moon is so freaking good. And we're also gonna break down the toy line, which feels like a combination of the past two movie lines. This video is kind of rounding out a trilogy of me talking about the original Transformers trilogy of movies. And I'll also be discussing the fourth and fifth films in the future, but I might take a detour and explore some other Transformers shows and toy lines. So let me know what corner of the franchise you're wanting me to talk about in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, so I can finally defeat Algae Rhythm, who was never going to win the war. A truce had to be made with AI slop YouTube shorts. Before we get into the main topic of this video, the toy line, let's talk about the movie itself, which starts off with an awesome scene of the Ark fleeing Cybertron. This is one of the few times where we get to see the Bayverse Cybertron during the war, and man, the CGI in this sequence is amazing. To be honest, I think this movie might have some of the best CGI ever. There are so many moments that look absolutely incredible, and it is so easy to get lost in the movie, completely forgetting that the robots aren't really there. Anyway, the plot of the movie comes from the Ark, which actually crash landed on the moon decades before the Autobots arrived. The Ark was carrying precious cargo called the Pillars, which could be used to transport Cybertron to another planet to take it over and assimilate it into a new Cybertron. The movie feels like it takes the lore somewhat seriously and gives us a direct follow-up to Revenge of the Fallen, with Megatron still alive but on his back foot, barely keeping the Decepticons together. I love Megatron's Dark of the Moon design. His face is completely mangled, and he turns into this rusty Mad Max looking truck, which was so cool to me as a kid. He was like the dark opposite of Optimus. And the movie also introduced Shockwave. Instead of being a logical mad scientist, movie Shockwave is a brutal warrior who commands a monstrous creature called the Driller. I remember reading a TFW 2005 article where Michael Bay said that Shockwave was the main villain of the movie, which I fully believed as a gullible kid. And I was very disappointed when he ended up as essentially a mini-boss with one whole line. Still, I think the design is cool, and he seems way more inspired by G1 than most of the Bayverse characters, but man, Michael Bay really tricked me with that one. I think my expectation of him being the villain, and that not being true, did kinda sour my first watch, along with people's big fat heads getting in the way of the screen, of course. The true villain of the movie is actually Sentinel Prime, who is Optimus Prime's mentor. I love Sentinel's design in this movie. He looks similar to Optimus, but has his own distinct identity, and the fire truck he turns into is not only cool, but Optimus has turned into fire trucks in other media, and Sentinel transforming into one feels like a nod to that. Of course, Sentinel turns out to be a traitor, working with the Decepticons to bring Cybertron to Earth and enslave the planet, completely betraying the values he taught Optimus Prime. And he also brutally kills Ironhide, which is easily the most shocking part of the movie. I've said this before, but it should have been a major red flag that his weapons shoot cosmic rust, which is basically like super cancer for Transformers, and it literally eats them alive, turning them into dust. The final battle between Optimus, Sentinel, and Megatron is pure cinema. It's so completely brutal in such a satisfying way. And while many people feel as though Optimus is a psychopath in these movies, can you blame him? One of his best friends was vaporized by his former mentor, who also turned around and betrayed the Autobot cause, not to mention the invasion of Chicago, which was caused by Sentinel and no doubt killed hundreds of thousands of people. So yeah, he's not your typical Optimus Prime, he's been through some stuff, but the movies have displayed this universe is far more brutal, and sparing Sentinel or Megatron surely would have caused more trouble for Earth. I get why people say Prime is a psycho, but I personally see him as a warrior with the weight of 2 worlds on his shoulders. And I think I would also be a psychopath after all that. To each their own though, I completely understand the criticism as Bayverse Optimus hardly represents the traditional Optimus Prime. But for me personally, he works as the hero of these movies, and I wish more of his past had been discussed in these movies. Bayverse is great at giving you action-packed moments, but in terms of story, all 3 of them left me wanting so much more. And I did want to mention Megan Fox's ousting from this movie. She and Michael Bay clashed publicly after Revenge of the Fallen, and she was replaced by a model named Rosie Huntington Whiteley, who does fine in the movie as Sam's new girlfriend Carly, though it's painfully obvious that the character was meant to be Michaela. And Carly's story mostly falls flat because of that. The actress does fine, but you can't just copy and paste an attractive woman into the role and expect an audience to resonate with them. And I would have loved to see Michaela call Megatron a bitch to his face instead of a Randy like Carly. I know I didn't cover every little part of the movie in this review, but I just wanted to highlight some of my favorite parts. And I would love to hear your favorite parts of Dark of the Moon or just the whole trilogy in general in the comments. By the way, Dark of the Moon has to be the dumbest movie subtitle of all time, and I'm genuinely shocked that the movie was released with that title. Also, much like how the Decepticons invaded Chicago, I am also invading Chicago for TFCon this year. By the time this video comes out, I should be heading up to the Windy City with my pal and fellow YouTuber JCC2224, and we're going to be on a YouTuber panel along with Treebot Reviews, Deluxe Baldwin, Patriot Prime Reviews, and Bots Obsession. I'm super excited and super nervous, but I can't wait to meet some of you and cut it up about Transformers. I'll be at the con all weekend, and the panel is on Friday at 6 p.m. I hope to see some of you there. With the new movie must of course come a new toy line, and Dark of the Moon also introduced a new gimmick called Mech Tech, which featured large transforming weaponry. Much like the last 2 movie gimmicks, it's neat but not intrusive or noteworthy. While Revenge of the Fallen's toy line was hallmarked by some insanely difficult to transform toys, Dark of the Moon's toy line scaled that back a bit. They still managed to reflect a lot of the designs really well, but most figures were easier to transform, and it also seemed like Hasbro skimped a lot on the paint for this line, with many Transformers having unpainted details. Just like the other videos, we'll be starting with the Deluxe class Transformers, and move all the way up to Ultimate class. Let's start our Autobot Deluxes with Bumblebee, who honestly kinda took a backseat after the first movie came out. Like, he's around and has a bigger role than most Autobots, but I felt like ROTF was explicitly about Sam, and DOTM is way more about Optimus. But this new toy is great. The ROTF Bumblebee was a slight retool of the 2007 movie toy, but the DOTM version is a brand new mold, and he's probably the best mainline deluxe Bumblebee overall. Though his Camaro mode has these NASCAR netting things that I don't really like on the car, he also features some Stealth Force components, where you can flip up his roof and reveal missiles. Stealth Force was a weird marketing thing where the Transformers had combat mode versions of their vehicles. It actually did get included in the movie a little bit, which is cool. Some of the new Autobots in the movie, the Wreckers, also got toys. The Wreckers are 3 aggressive Autobots that transform into race cars, which is kind of a terrible alt mode if you want to hide, but it's also sick as hell. I'm not a NASCAR fan, but I grew up around my grandpa who would watch it all the time, so I think Topspin, Roadbuster, and Leadfoot are really cool. Topspin is molded to be in his Stealth Force mode, while Roadbuster is just a normal race car. Also, who remembers Amp Energy? I would drink that stuff all the time as a kid. Unfortunately, Leadfoot would never get an American release, with the 2-pack featuring him getting cancelled, so the only way to get a deluxe Leadfoot was to buy the Japanese version, which didn't even have his distinctive Target sponsorships. So that's unfortunate. I think Leadfoot might be cursed because his Studio Series toy is also freakishly hard to obtain, and that figure did actually release in the United States. It sucks because I love Leadfoot's big belly design, and I think all the Wreckers are pretty interesting. Ratchet returns, this time as a deluxe, which is honestly way too small of a scale for Ratchet, especially considering his vehicle mode is a literal Hummer and should be huge. But ignoring scale, he seems like a really great toy, and the robot mode is really movie accurate. Sideswipe also got a new figure, which is both an upgrade and downgrade. The figure as a whole seems excellent, with a fun transformation, solid robot mode, and a cool convertible vehicle mode, which is kind of rare for a Transformer to have, though there isn't a floor under the seats, so maybe the car works Flintstone style. The main downgrade upgrade is the lack of paint. Sideswipe is a flashy silver Corvette Stingray, and this toy is just an ugly gray color. So while the toy itself is good, the severe lack of paint holds him back. The Autobot inventor Q did get a new toy, but like Leadfoot, it sadly never made it to United States retail, and he only got released in the Japanese Dark of the Moon toy line. It's a very nice toy though, and while Q is quite an ugly robot, he is nice and lovable, and his death always makes me sad. Dino, another new Autobot in the movie, sadly did not receive a toy in the American line, and while the Japanese line did have a Dino toy, it was actually a repaint and slight retool of Sideways from ROTF. Dino would only receive a mold of his own 10 years later in the Studio Series line. Both Dino and Q were interesting, because at some point their names were supposed to be Mirage and Wheeljack, which are the names of classic Transformers characters, but for various reasons both of their names changed. In Dino's case, it was because he turned into a Ferrari, and the owners of the car brand wanted the robot to be named after one of the Ferrari family. I actually really like the name Dino in general, so I think this is a cool name. And it's not like there's anything that Dino does in the movie that invokes G1 Mirage. Q is assumed to be Wheeljack's nickname, as he has a similar role in the Autobots to the James Bond character Q, who equips Bond with spy gear. Still, it's really weird and has sparked many fan debates on which names count, though we may have an answer. The recent Studio Series toys seem to confirm that Wheeljack's nickname is Q, and Dino's name is just Dino, with no relation to Mirage. The last deluxe Autobot we're talking about isn't actually in the movie. Air Raid is a very awkward looking green robot. He's got a very distinctive head that doesn't feel very Transformers to me for some reason, but he turns into a really cool plane mode. His MechTech weapon actually becomes part of the plane in vehicle mode, because the plane he turns into has one of these weird mushroom things on the roof. Moving on to the deluxe Decepticons, we got a deluxe version of Starscream. Much like Ratchet, Deluxe is way too small for the character, but at the same time, this is a great little figure. And I do think that these sort of budget options for characters from the last two movies is a good thing. Some people think movie Starscream was done dirty because Sam kills him, and while I agree he could have fought back more in the scene, I think Sam taking out Starscream out of all Decepticons makes sense, because this Starscream was never a huge threat to begin with, as he's not as conniving as previous versions and seemed to be actually loyal to Megatron. And I think Sam finally fighting back against both human and Decepticon threats in this movie is a good evolution of the character, who mostly screamed and ran in the last two movies. Barricade kind of randomly also got a new toy. He is actually in the movie for a few seconds, as is per tradition for the character post 2007 movie. This toy was easily the most accurate looking Barricade at that point. I love how his front bumper rotates, revealing the sharper angles of his chest in robot mode. And overall, he just looks great in both modes. Laserbeak, a new Decepticon, also got a toy. Laserbeak follows Scorponok and Ravage as the bestial Decepticon causing havoc, though Laserbeak seems far more intelligent. His toy is actually fantastic. The beast mode is super screen accurate, and his head looks so cool. He even has a moving jaw and articulated neck. His vehicle mode is also pretty clever, and compared to the Scorponok and Ravage toys, it's easily the best of the three. The Decepticons' answer to the Wreckers is their Dreads, 3 SUVs that transform into monstrous warriors. Crankcase was the only Dread to get a toy in the main line. He turns into an SUV just like in the movie. I don't really like the look of Crankcase's robot mode. His limbs are long and gangly, and his body is small, though I do like the weird beetle thing he has going on with his head and back, and his SUV mode is also cool. But like Ratchet, it's much too small. Darksteel is a repaint of Sideswipe, giving him a very cool black and teal deco, while his robot mode reveals a lot of burnt yellow. Darksteel is apparently a homage to Quickstrike, who is a goofy Beast Wars character that turned into a scorpion that had a snake for a tail. Really wacky and pretty cool, and that figure is where Darksteel gets his colors. He also has kind of a cobra looking head. Moving on to the Voyager class Autobots, we have Optimus Prime. In the last two movie lines, Optimus had an iconic leader class toy, but for Dark of the Moon he only has a Voyager and Ultimate class. This Voyager class Optimus is really weird looking. His proportions are kind of strange, with super long legs and a shorter torso. He's built like a Transformers 1 character. He looks fine for the most part, though his truck mode weirdly has solar panels on the roof and hood, I guess to go with the moon theme. We also had a new Voyager Ironhide. This one is a major improvement of the 07 mode, though he's very fiddly. But man, that pickup truck mode will never not be cool. And I love the painted Autobot symbol on the trunk. A new Autobot that was not seen in the movie is Skyhammer, an artillery helicopter. He's pretty cool. I love the way the rotor blades wrap around his chest in robot mode. That's such a good idea. Moving on to Decepticons, we of course had Megatron, or as I like to call him, Punished Megatron. This figure is actually really cool. Megatron gets his iconic cloak, and while he was beefier in the movie, the toy does an okay job of capturing his look. I love that he has light piping. It makes the damaged side of his face look so cool. The truck mode is amazing. It's so awesome how he transforms into a truck and trailer, and the trailer can even pivot, which is excellent engineering. Finally, for Voyagers, we have Shockwave. Like I said, I was pretty disappointed by Shockwave's role in the movie, and that disappointment extended to his movie toy, which I really do not like. For some reason, his super wide chest has always bothered me, and it looks like his head is sunken into his chest. It's not the worst toy ever, but as the only mainline Shockwave toy, I do think he leaves something to be desired. We had 3 leader class toys in this line, starting with Bumblebee, which feels like a really random character to get a leader class, considering he's one of the smallest Autobots, but he is basically the franchise mascot, so I guess it makes sense. Though I would have greatly preferred a leader class Shockwave. But this big Bumblebee is pretty cool. I said it before, but I do love a toy that turns into a big ass car. Previous leader class figures from the movies have had lights and sounds, but all that is stored in this ridiculous looking mech tech weapon, which I actually like. It makes the lights and sounds completely optional. Bumblebee in robot mode looks like he's been working out. His body is so beefy, he looks like a Gears of War character, but overall he seems really fun. Not the best Bumblebee ever, but far from the worst. He kind of feels like a remake of Ultimate Bumblebee in some ways. Next we have Leader Class Sentinel Prime. Sentinel also had a Voyager class toy, but I only ever cared about this BBFT, Big Beautiful Fire Truck. And man, I love this alt mode so much. We really do not get enough fire truck transformers. And this is also a pretty unique fire truck, being a rescue vehicle designed for airports apparently. His robot mode kinda has the same issue as Bumblebee, just a bit too beefy in the torso, but I don't even care, man. He looks so cool. Easily my favorite Sentinel Prime design overall. The final leader class toy of Dark of the Moon is actually Ironhide, who I'm assuming got a leader class for reasons. This dude is an incredible toy. His truck mode is nice and big like you would expect, of course featuring some stealth force weaponry, and his robot mode might be the best looking Ironhide to this day. I absolutely love how the chest comes together. The front ends of the truck forming a V shape has always looked so sick, and this toy adapts that design perfectly. He does have very blue legs, which is kind of weird. It looks like he's wearing pants, but I really don't mind it personally. He's also kitted out with weapons hidden in each limb, and a giant cannon is hidden in his stomach.
I just wanted to show him my cannons.
Overall, a great figure, and feels like a tribute to one of the few auxiliary Autobots that people actually felt attached to. The final toy of the main line we'll be discussing is Ultimate Optimus Prime, which features Optimus with his trailer that he has in the movie. In Revenge of the Fallen, Optimus gets a jet mode upgrade by using Jetfire's parts, but in DOTM he has this trailer that transforms into a weapon rack. Ultimate Optimus doesn't really reflect this at all though. It comes with an okay Optimus Prime, and the trailer actually transforms into basically a mech suit for Prime. He can barely move. As someone who grew up with Optimus having super modes, I actually love this. His wingspan is insane, and I really appreciate that the trailer fully transforms and doesn't have to break apart. The Dark of the Moon toy line is not as innovative as Revenge of the Fallen's, but it's also not as overly complicated and fiddly, though Hasbro definitely cut corners for this line. With minimal paint applications, overall smaller toys, and a somewhat sparse cast of characters. But I can say for certain that Dark of the Moon had a solid toy line, with many toys being worth looking back on. But of course, these weren't all the toys toys for the movie, we still have much to discuss. Stealth Force was a subline of toys for Dark of the Moon. Like I mentioned in the first section, sometimes during the movie the Transformers would have weaponized vehicle modes, which the toy line calls Stealth Force, and there was even a video game based around the concept. So we're going to get into exactly what the Stealth Force toy line was, but before we do, I want to show off my brand new merch. This design was done by my longtime collaborator Centipede.gov and features my dinosaur mascot in a robot mode for him. The robot mode has my iconic scarf and sometimes iconic propeller hat. The robot mode is based on a classic Transformer that is not a Transformer, the Warp Digivolving Agumon to War Greymon. He even has the separated headpieces in the back, just like the Agumon headpieces of that original toy. This is the first design made specifically to be merch, and I'm so happy with it. Right now you can get the design on a shirt, hoodie, or tank top. If you've ever wanted to support the channel outside of just watching, buying merch is an amazing way to do that, and you get an awesome shirt to go with it. Okay, back to the toys. Like I said earlier, many of the actual transforming toys had Stealth Force modes, but there was also a subline, which featured vehicle modes that transformed into weaponized modes, with no robot mode included. I'll just say it off rip, I hate this idea, and I kinda think these toys are lame. They seem like premium rage bait too. Give this to a kid who thinks they're getting an actual Transformer, and then watch the hope leave their eyes. That being said, while I think they're lame Transformers toys, they do seem to be competent toys that do exactly what you think. Pop open revealing weapons, and then pop back into a normal vehicle. These would be great fidget toys, I can't lie. There are several sizes for the subline as well. Some are small and come with little minifigures of Transformers, and some are a bit bigger. The largest ones with lights and sounds seem pretty fun. I like the way Bumblebee's head pokes out of the hood on this figure. But as products with the Transformers brand name, I can't help but feel like they fall short. But I'm sure there are some kids out there that love their Stealth Force toys, and I'm happy for them. Speaking of short, let's talk about the Cyberverse subline. For the past two movies, we've seen the Legends class, which are mini versions of the movie characters, into sort of a budget toy line. Legends class is super underrated in my opinion, and Dark of the Moon easily has the best Legends class, which has been renamed to Cyberverse, which is different from the cartoon from 2018 called Transformers Cyberverse. That's just one of 100 examples of the franchise reusing keywords constantly. The Dark of the Moon Cyberverse line actually has two size classes of its own, Legion and Commander class. Legion class is your typical very simple Transformers, while Commander class Transformers were a bit more complex but still small. And they also introduced playsets for your Cyberverse toys, which is so cool and pretty rare for Transformers outside of City Bots. So let's start with the Legion class. Bumblebee got a glow up even in this line, with a much better Legion class mold than the previous two movies. Sideswipe also got an excellent little figure showing off his new convertible look, though his arm blades look more like little forks. The Wreckers also got Legion class figures. Both the Leadfoot and Roadbuster are in Stealth Force mode, while Topspin is just a normal race car. Topspin is actually a crazy shell former, with the two halves of the car making up his backpack. The other two are great though, and Roadbuster's vehicle mode in particular looks great for the scale. On the Decepticon side of things, we have Starscream, who was a weird, inaccurate color scheme. He kinda looks like the first movie version, but has splotches of ugly camo on him. The Dreads, Crankcase, and Crowbar got Legion class figures. Crankcase is an SUV like in the movie, while Crowbar is some sort of undercover police car. I wish they were both SUVs, but Hasbro didn't seem comfortable giving 3 figures the same alt mode, which I guess makes sense, but it just makes Crowbar non-screen accurate. I love the look of Crankcase with the folded up car chest, and it looks like he has better arm swords than Sideswipe. Legion class is fun, but Commander class is where it's at. There was a preview figure for Dark of the Moon, and it was Optimus Prime that came with a pair of 3D glasses, since Dark of the Moon was the first 3D Transformers movie. This Prime is an upgraded form of the 07 version, being given much longer legs and a little jetpack. Ironhide also got a Commander class because reasons, and man, he's great. A complex little figure with 2 fantastic alt modes. In fact, every Ironhide toy in the Dark of the Moon line is fantastic. I wonder why. A non-movie Cyberverse Commander was Powerglide, who looks like the G1 character with a movie filter put over him. It feels kinda random, but he does look great. Sentinel Prime looks really good in both modes. His proportions in robot mode are are especially accurate. The final dread, Hatchet, got a Commander class toy. This version of Hatchet turns into a plane instead of an SUV, but he maintains his animalistic robot mode. I always thought this mold looked cool, and I kinda do think the plane is more fun than the SUV, even though I was just complaining about Crowbar. Strangely enough, Blackout also got a Commander class toy. Blackout died in the first movie, and his twin, Grindor, got unfaced by Prime in ROTF. But I'm low-key glad to see him back in this toy line, even though he is pretty awkward and loose looking, but he does come with Scorponok, who becomes a weapon, and his helicopter mode looks excellent. Next up, we're going to talk about the only Dark of the Moon toy I remember owning, Commander class Megatron. This figure is excellent. He turns into the cab of his Mad Max style truck mode, and his weapons turn into this tiny oil tanker, so he kinda looks like a chibi version of Megatron's vehicle mode. And the robot mode is so cool and posable. The way the grill of the truck becomes his chest actually reminds me of Rise of the Beast Scourge. Isn't it insane how Scourge basically swagjacked DOTM Megatron's alt mode? There was actually a bigger set with this Megatron that featured his trailer, which could transform into a base, as well as a jetpack. But I just love the look of that complete vehicle mode. It's such a cool looking truck. Optimus Prime also got a deluxe set with his trailer. The truck with trailer looks amazing. It's a shame we don't see it more in the movie, because it really activates my neurons. The trailer actually turns into a mech suit. It kind of reminds me of Ultimate Optimus Prime, the way he just stands in it. I was expecting a jetpack mode, so the mech suit was kind of surprising. The Starscream playset is one of the best. Not only does Starscream have his movie-accurate tattoo deco, but he comes with the Orbital Assault Carrier, one of the Decepticon spaceships from the movie, which is so cool. And the base mode it transforms into is also really good, with lots of floor space for your Cyberverse figures. Shockwave also got a playset, and his robot mode looks so much better than the Voyager, but unfortunately the set as a whole is really weak. And while I like the idea of this extended tank mode, it mostly looks like a whole lot of nothing. Finally, we have the Arc playset, which features Roller, who turns into a moon rover. I love that as an alt mode, and I think it's awesome that his name is Roller. The Arc itself is amazing looking, a great piece, and looks close to the movie design. I'm glad the cockpit can open so you can have a Transformer pilot it, and you can actually open the Arc into this expansive playset. It just looks so fun. I know me as a kid would have a field day with this. There's a little prison, gunner stations, and the 5 pillars from the movie are even in the set. So I love this thing and would love to own it one day. Hasbro really knocked it out of the park with the Cyberverse line, and if I collected anything from Dark of the Moon, it would be this line. Our final section of this video will be covering Dark of the Moon's Human Alliance subline. Introduced with ROTF, Human Alliance features complex and detailed vehicle modes that can actually house a little action figure. But with DOTM, they actually expanded the line, featuring smaller vehicles and characters that were not from the movie, called the Basic line. Hasbro was obsessed with weapons for Dark of the Moon, so all of the basic Human Alliance toys turn into ridiculous weapons as well. But the line overall is really cool and has some great toys, like Ice Pick, a snowmobile partnered with a human called Sergeant Chaos, which sounds like a G.I. Joe character, but he's just some random made-up guy for the toy line. Ice Pick is really cool though. A snowmobile is pretty unique, and the white and purple color scheme is slick. We also had Backfire, who turns into a 3-wheeled motorcycle, which is another unique alt mode, and looks really cool, though his robot mode is kind of ugly. Tailpipe is the best value out of the basic Human Alliance figures, because he not only comes with the human Sergeant Noble, but he also has a little friend called Pinpointer, who turns into a weapon that goes on the back of Tailpipe's motorcycle mode. This is a really solid set, and both robots look great. Tailpipe reminds me of Commander Zero from Kamen Rider Zets, and Pinpointer is a cute little guy, though he has a very unfortunate 5mm peg placement. Pinpointer got his pinpointer out, bruh, but overall, it's an awesome set. Dragstrip is the last basic figure I'll be mentioning. He comes with a human called Master Disaster, who is weirdly translucent, maybe implying he's a hologram or something, but Dragstrip is cool because he turns into a Formula 4 car, though I don't love the garish yellow and purple color scheme. Moving on to the main line of Human Alliance toys, which features only movie characters, let's switch it up and start with the Decepticon first, which would have to be Dumb Jake. We're watching Dumb Jake. Yes. He hasn't talked about Soundwave once this whole video. This is personal. We need to stop watching Dumb Jake. Do you understand me?
I understand. No, Dumb Jake. Only J4.
Yes, it's I, JCC2224, talking about Human Alliance Soundwave. Human Alliance came back for Dark of the Moon, at least for a few figures, and interestingly, Soundwave was one of them. And before you ask, no, this is not the original, this is a Takara Tomy repaint that came out just a little bit later. But you may be asking, J4, what was Human Alliance? Well, it was a Transformer that had an alliance with a human. And of course, Soundwave had an alliance in the movie with little Dylan Gould. Yeah, all these Human Alliance figures come with actual little humans. And, yeah, this is, interesting. Not really seeing Patrick Dempsey there, definitely not. But it's cute, I guess. I got this from a knockoff version of Human Alliance Soundwave that also came with the Laserbeak that this figure came with. This Laserbeak is cool. He can flap his wings. He can, yeah, we're not gonna talk about that. But back to the Soundwave, I've always loved his Mercedes-Benz SLS AMG alt mode, and this figure captures it perfectly. Unfortunately, neither this guy or the later deluxe class Soundwave came out in the US. Essentially, they didn't want to spoil that the Mercedes-Benz in the movie turned into Soundwave. They didn't want to spoil it, so they released the toys a little bit later. But unfortunately, these toys just, they didn't make the cut. They canceled the Dark of the Moon line in the US in favor of Prime. But hey, at least there are still ways to get this mold and to get this toy in your collection if you want it. Dark of the Moon Soundwave's transformation, like pretty much any Human Alliance figure, is pretty complex. There's a lot going on here, a lot of moving pieces. Definitely not for the faint of heart, but it's still very fun, and you can see it's forming a robot that might have some proportion issues. I know a lot of people joke when Transformers are, maybe a little top-heavy, they say they skipped leg day, but it's no joke. This Soundwave literally skipped leg day. His arms are bigger than his legs. What is going on? I'm personally not the biggest fan of this proportioning, and it's not super movie accurate, but you know what? I still love it. I still just love this figure and the whole look of him. I've always loved the wheel placement of Dark of the Moon Soundwave, having it on the shoulders and on the hands here. This guy's head sculpt is fantastic, even though it does emphasize the very controversial decision to give Soundwave a mouth in Dark of the Moon.
No prisoners, only trophies.
But still, despite all the shortcomings, he still has some pretty decent articulation and everything, and he just has a really cool look to him. I've always been a big fan of Dark of the Moon Soundwave. Now, because he is Human Alliance, you do also have integration in the robot mode. You can use Laserbeak as kind of a G1 shoulder cannon, and you can have little Patrick Dempsey up there. Overall, Human Alliance was a ton of fun, and this Soundwave is my personal favorite, despite all of his flaws and shortcomings, which are quite a few. But that's not all for Dark of the Moon Soundwave's toys. He didn't just get a Human Alliance, he also got a Deluxe class and a Little Legion class. Guess which one was available in the United States? Yup, if you wanted a Dark of the Moon Soundwave back in the day and you weren't willing to import or go to a specialty shop, this was your only option. This is a nice looking little Mercedes-Benz SLS, but it's definitely, all gray, kind of meh. Pretty simple transformation as well. And now granted, even though I really do love this guy's little transformation, it is a Legion class at the end of the day. So articulation's very simple, details very simple. Now granted, he's got proportionate legs, but still, he's a very simple little Soundwave toy. Still looks great, like pretty much all the little Dark of the Moon Cyberverse toys did. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of fans are pretty upset that this is what they got in the US instead of something a little bit more substantial. The Deluxe Class Dark of the Moon Soundwave, again, only available as a Takara release at the start. He was canceled, and he wasn't released in the US. Unfortunately, this guy's vehicle mode is a super mega ugly tone of silver plastic. The clear windshield is gross, the gray is just kind of gross. Not the biggest fan of the vehicle mode on this one. The transformation on the Deluxe Soundwave is actually really nice. I have to show this part. I love how the entirety of the leg kind of does this massive fold around. And not only that, but all of this panel work is going to fold into the leg and make it kind of nice and square. And look, he actually has a pretty proportionate foot, unlike another one. But despite that, he's still got a little bit of kibble, and he's, not perfect, but I'm definitely vibing with it a bit more. Another interesting thing I gotta show about this Soundwave is his chest transformation, because he's got the front of the car right here in the front, as it should be. But nope. You flip it back, and you replace it with an entirely fake chest. Yeah, kind of interesting how they decided to do that. Yeah, I feel sorry for people that didn't get this back in 2011 because they were missing out. A lot of us were missing out on this one. The deluxe's details are fantastic. I love the silver face, even though I'm missing the silver literally everywhere else. I love how the wheels kind of tuck behind the back, even though it's a total pain to get that all cleared out. He does have some very interesting kibble, especially with the windshield right there. It looks like he just has a square dangling in between his legs. It's just kind of floating there menacingly. But hey, at least he's got legs. They're kind of weird looking, but he's got them. His arms look really cool. It looks like they're covered in like sonic speakers or something. But my favorite part about this figure is actually his mech tech weapon, believe it or not. So his mech tech weapon is this super awesome looking blaster that I cannot get enough of. But this is actually one of the few deluxe weapons where when you transform it, it actually has a little click into place to stay in its alternate form, which very fittingly for movie Soundwave is a little satellite dish. I love Dark of the Moon Soundwave's toys. It's such a shame about their availability, the fact that so many of them were canceled, just to save a spoiler that I don't think a lot of us really cared about and most of us saw coming. But hey, at least they were available in some ways, and hey, we've got the Studio Series now, that's pretty accessible.
Soundwave superior, dumbjake inferior.
Okay, that was kind of rude. I'm gonna fart in the car the whole way to TFCon for that, JCC. But moving on, the Human Alliance line for DOTM is somewhat disappointing because there are so few figures. Besides Soundwave, who never actually came to the States, there were repaints of Bumblebee and Skids. I haven't mentioned it, but there were several toys of Skids and Mudflap in this toy line, which confused me as a kid because they were nowhere to be found in the actual movie. The only other toys that were actually new molds were Leadfoot and Roadbuster. Roadbuster is in his Stealth Force form, which I think I actually prefer. Race cars are cool, but you can't tell me Roadbuster's vehicle mode isn't cool as hell. Though I think it's funny you still have to open the doors to get the figure out, because race cars don't normally have doors, which is why you see the drivers hopping through the window a lot. Roadbuster's bot mode is also cool. It could have used a bit more paint, but so could the whole line. And I like the little turret for his human partner. Leadfoot is pretty unfortunate. I will say his vehicle mode is a beautiful looking race car. I love the Target logo and the red just pops to me, but his robot mode leaves a lot to be desired. Leadfoot just overall looks awkward, and his main body is so spindly and weird. He can hold his human partner in his chest like one of those baby carriers, but because he can do that, there's a weird gap. He does come with an awesome accessory in the form of Steeljaw, Leadfoot's pet dog that only showed up in concept art. I love this little guy, and he even has a leash, and he transforms into a crossbow, which is sick. I really wish there were more Human Alliance figures, but unfortunately the line was seemingly cut short, and since they've never brought it back, I have to assume the cost of producing them just wasn't matching up with the sales, which sucks. I hope Hasbro does try something like this again in the future. So that's my video on Dark of the Moon. It feels good to complete this trilogy, and I do plan on talking about every other Transformers movie, as well as every Transformers show and toy line. I mean, I might as well, right? I'm going to be taking a break from the Bayhem though, so let me know what corner of the franchise you want me to look at next. Also, thanks to JCC2224 for covering Soundwave in this video. Reminder, we will both be at TFCon all weekend, and we'll also be on a Transformers YouTuber panel on Friday at 6 p.m. Also, if you see either of us, please feel free to say hi. I will probably be recording or look annoyed, so don't worry about interrupting me to say hi, I don't mind, and I always look like that so I'm not actually annoyed. Alright y'all, thanks so much for watching, please consider liking and subscribing, and if you'd like to support me past that, I have a YouTube membership and Patreon. For $1 a month, both give you the same thing, access to my super chill Discord server, where we talk about toys daily, watch Toku weekly, and movies monthly. And you also get weekly exclusive videos called Toy Dives, where I take a look at random toy lines like Tech Deck Dudes, those silly skateboarding guys from the 2000s. And just one quick reminder that I do have the new shirt design out. I absolutely love it, and you will too. So check out the links below to get one. Alright y'all, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.
It's Sentinel Prime, not Sentinel. This isn't some lady's hair product. It's Sentinel. It's Sentinel Prime, not Sentinel. You don't believe me? Hear it from the man himself. Sentinel. Clearly. It's Sentinel. I mean, listen to it. Dumb Jake, do you think I'm out here collecting every single Sentinel Prime toy, even the knockoffs, to hear him be called Sentinel again? All this time, over and over, Sentinel this, Sentinel... Just stop. Just get some help.